Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about another sound request somebody had. Somebody talked about a track called Spells by Lifeforms, and he wanted to know how to make like the sweeps and little whooshes that are in there. So I took one of those sounds out and we're going to deconstruct it. And while deconstructing it and recreating it, I want to recreate it from scratch this time. And I want to kind of go about some of the general things that I do when trying to recreate the sound. I already have a recreated version, but I'll kind of do it again, and hopefully I can get it again and kind of show you how I go through that. And I think that would be interesting, and I hope you can apply those techniques to your own sounds. Try to recreate a few sounds and up your sound design level or your sound design capabilities with these tricks. So without further ado, let's get right into it. Alright, so here we have part of the track that was requested to be recreated. We're mainly going to be focusing on this swoosh thing that we have in here. And it sounds like this. There's this little swoosh in there. There's also a lot of other stuff happening, so it's a little bit hard to get the texture right, maybe in one listen. So I'll listen to it a few more times. And while listening, I always tend to look at the spectrum. So this is an EQ8 here with the spectrum. Generally, what you want to do is turn off any filtering for that. Personally, what I like to do is turn all of them off, so the line becomes gray and it's easier to see the spectrum itself. And you can see there's a few things happening in there as well. We have these little clicks here and there. There's other background noise, and that is something you kind of have to filter out. So for example, in this spectrum, we have this stuff happening here. We want to ignore that when sound designing, because that's not part of the sound that we are trying to recreate. So that's sometimes a little bit hard to do, but you get the feeling for that once you do it for a little while. So let's actually go over the sound that I made and the sound that we will be trying to recreate. It sounds like this. So if you are completely new to sound design, this might seem a little bit hard to do, but it's basically done in steps. So we'll start with the first step, which is just gathering some basic information about the sound. For example, the key in which it's played. So what we can do is again look at the spectrum and just check around here which key it's probably played. So we're around D sharp, that kind of area. So we'll just make a MIDI note here and we'll go down to D0. And because I know the kind of feeling, the kind of texture that we have, I know that we need to stay in the lower octave. Again, that is something that just comes with experience. Once you start deconstructing sounds a lot more, you will be able to get that. So we'll load up Serum here for just a basic saw wave. And we're now at D0. And now we can just kind of, confront the key that we have here with what our saw wave is playing. So you can hear that it sounds a little bit off. And if we turn it up to D sharp, you will hear that they sound nice in tune. You can also hear that by playing both of them at the same time. So that's what we have now. Now this is a very noisy kind of stereo feeling sound that we have, this kind of swoop. So to achieve that, what I like to do is just detune it. And to get rid of that clickiness and turn it into more of a noise, I also like to randomize the phase. So we'll randomize all of them. And now we have something like this. So already kind of getting that noisy texture that we want for this sound. So now we can add a filter to get kind of the sweep going. And we can draw in our sweep just the way we want it. For example, like this. And we'll give them a little nice curve. Something like that. And we're already getting fairly close here. So a few more things I'd like to do is add a little bit of extra stereo width to it with some stereo effects like these. Compress it. And now we need to check our spectrum against what we have in our reference. The spectrum is one of the more important parts of the sound if you're trying to recreate it. That's kind of what shows you what the texture is like in terms of like all the frequencies that are being used. If it's bright enough, if it's muddy enough, if there's any harmonics that are way too loud, you can see all of that on the spectrum. So let's look at that. And we can immediately see that there's a lot more stuff happening in the low end in our sound as opposed to the original. So we can just kind of filter that out. And we don't need that anymore, so we can just add a filter here. Maybe even a steep filter. Just like that. And now we can go back and look at this spectrum again. You can see that here there's a nice little hump, which you can also add. Maybe with number 3 here. And we can also see that it's a little bit too extreme on the this area here, so we'll turn that down. And kind of trying to get the right tone here. So let's say we like this. For my original recreation, you can see I did a lot more stuff also with erosion and this kind of thing and the overdrive. So that's adding a lot more tone to it. But that's all to kind of get the basic texture and the basic spectrum down. And obviously the patch is also different because I spent a lot more time on that one as well. But you get kind of the idea. This is just to kind of show off the way you would do that. So for the final thing, what we want to do is we hear a little bit of reverb on there. You can hear that there's like a high-end tail kind of sitting in there, which isn't present here. So that's kind of a sign of a reverb being applied there. And also it has that nice spacey feeling. So we can just add a reverb to that to get the same effect. I like to turn off any input processing so I can color it myself later while I listen to how the tail sounds and that kind of thing. So let's listen to this. Obviously we want high quality. Just get rid of some of the low end as well. So that's kind of the reverb that we wanted. And that's how I kind of recreate the sound. So as you can see, it's a lot like a lot of steps and trying to decide where each part of a sound is kind of coming from. And it's a lot of dissecting, analyzing, and it's very basic sound design. Normally when I do like something very complex, it's usually because I'm trying to have a sound that I have in my head or a method that I have in my head. But when I'm recreating stuff, I tend to stay very, very simple and try to get the basics of the sound down and trying to expand it from there. So that's kind of how you do it. And obviously, it's if you train on this thing, if you do it regularly and try to keep your sound design up, then it's easier. It's not something you can do from one day to another. Tutorials also help, of course, but again, those are very case specific. Generally, like now you will be able to create this sound that I just showed off, but you might have trouble with a different sound. So try to find a way for yourself to dissect sounds and to find the key elements of sound. Try to describe sounds. Maybe you would describe something this as a sweep with some space to it, a lot of air, a lot of noise, those kind of terms, and try to write those down when trying to recreate a sound so you have some terms to work to. For example, if you say I want a noisy sound, then you can add some noise to it. If you say I want a gritty sound, maybe you can try to get a very low octave because that will make it sound grittier. And with time, that kind of comes, and it's easy to think that it's something that you can just learn in a few days, but it really takes a longer time to learn this thing. So keep doing it and trying, and eventually you will be able to do it, and it will become like a very easy part of like your routine in music making. So that's going to be it for today. If you enjoyed today's video, please leave a like. If you're new here, subscribe, and I hope to see you next time. Bye bye.